Okay, so I want you to picture this. You're not sitting in some grand library or a quiet study. No, you're in a Roman prison, maybe even chained to a guard, under house arrest. And you get word that a community you love, miles and miles away, is in the middle of a serious crisis. You can't go, you can't fix it in person. All you've got is some parchment, a pen, and a messenger you can trust. This is the reality behind some of the most influential letters ever written.
So let's dive right into this fascinating historical puzzle. We're going to unpack an urgent message sent to a really bustling, complicated town in the old Roman Empire, a place called Colossae. And the mystery we're trying to solve? Well, it's a strange spiritual sickness that's had scholars scratching their heads for centuries.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start inside that Roman prison cell. Then we'll travel to the city of Colossae to see what's going wrong. After that, we'll diagnose the real problem, which isn't what you might think. We'll look at the solution that was offered, and finally, we'll connect the dots and see why this ancient problem still matters a lot.
So who's the one writing these letters from lockup? It's the Apostle Paul. And yeah, he's in a pretty tight spot. He's under house arrest in Rome, which means he can't travel, he can't go where he's needed. So his only way to manage this crisis brewing hundreds of miles away is to write. And with these letters, you really have to read between the lines to get the full story.
So a guy named Epaphras, who was one of Paul's own students, makes this incredibly long journey all the way to Rome. And he brings bad news. The community he started back home in Colossae, well, they're in trouble. They're starting to drift, to lose their way, and he's hoping Paul can help get them back on course.
And this is where it gets really interesting. When scholars look closely at Paul's reply, they can't quite nail down what the problem was. It doesn't neatly fit into any of the well-known false teachings or heresies of that time. It's not just one thing. It's more like this weird, confusing cocktail of different ideas all mixed together. It's a real puzzle.
So, to figure this out, we need to do some detective work. The clues aren't just in the words of the letter, they're baked into the city itself. So let's zoom in and take a closer look at Colossae.
Okay, this is almost too perfect. Colossae was built right on the banks of the Meander River. It's a river that was so famous for its twisting and turning path that it literally gave us our word meander. And honestly, that's the best possible description for what was happening to the church there. They were meandering, wandering off from the clear, straight path they started on.
And you can see why things got so messy when you look at the map. Colossae was right on a major trade route, a real crossroads of the ancient world. It was a total melting pot. You had the original Phrygian people, you had Greeks, Romans, a large Jewish community. All these different cultures and ideas were constantly flowing in and out of the city.
So the problem wasn't one single bad idea that invaded from the outside. No, it was something way more subtle and maybe even more dangerous. We need to talk about the real culprit here, this messy, confusing blend of a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Just look at the spiritual marketplace in Colossae. It was crowded. You had local folk beliefs about nature spirits, you had astrology coming in from the east, you had the official state gods of Greece and Rome, you had these secret mystery religions, and you had a very unique local form of Judaism. All of these ideas were just swirling around, bumping into each other and mixing together.
And that brings us to the key term here: syncretism. That's what was happening. It's when you blend different beliefs and practices together. And the result, as our source material puts it, is a hodgepodge. It's like you're making a soup and you just keep adding more and more random ingredients until you can't even taste what the soup was supposed to be in the first place. The original message gets lost in the mix.
So if the problem is this super complex, messy blend of ideas, what's the solution? Well, you might think you need an equally complex answer, but Paul does the exact opposite. His solution is actually incredibly simple and direct. He just cuts right through all the noise. Now, this spiritual stew was having two really bad side effects. On the one hand, in their beliefs, God started to feel really distant, really far away, and Jesus was being demoted, kind of treated like just one more angel or spirit guide among many. And on the other hand, their daily behavior was becoming all about rules, obsessing over special days, festivals, and all these taboos about what you can and can't eat or touch. So Paul's response is to just sweep all that clutter off the table. He brings everything back to one single powerful idea: the absolute supremacy, the preeminence of Christ. He says, look, Christ isn't just another item on the spiritual menu. He is the whole thing. He's the fullness of God. He's the creator of everything. He's the conqueror of all those other spiritual powers, and he is the one and only head of the church, period. So at the end of the day,
The answer wasn't to invent a better religion with a new set of rules. It was to stop drifting toward religion entirely. The goal was to get back to a simple, direct relationship. It wasn't about following a complicated system, it was about following a person.
All right, let's bring this all into the present day. Because this ancient problem of mixing and blending beliefs, it's not just some dusty old piece of history. It's presented as a challenge that's just as relevant for us right now.
Now, just to show how this kind of blending is still happening, the author of our source material makes a pretty provocative point. They argue that the modern celebration of Christmas is a perfect example of syncretism. The idea is that it's essentially a pagan midwinter festival that has been blended with Christian ideas over time. It's a bold claim, for sure, but it's meant to make us think about what else we might have mixed into our own core beliefs.
And that really gets to the timeless lesson here. There's always this danger of adding extra stuff, rituals, ideas, traditions that can end up watering down the main point. There's always that temptation to turn a simple relationship into a complex religion filled with rules. Paul actually uses a really strong word for this. He warns the Colossians that these mixtures can literally kidnap them. They can carry them away from the core truth they started with.
So that leaves us with this final, really important question. A letter written almost 2,000 years ago from a Roman prison cell forces us to look at our own world today. A world that is absolutely overflowing with competing ideas, spiritualities, and philosophies. And it asks us, how do we figure out what's truly essential and how do we protect it?